Hello students, I hope you guys are doing well. In today's lesson, we're going to explore this idea of a scale drawing. Okay, so scale drawing are in the same idea, same vein as understanding scale copies, right? We're still dealing with scale factors, something that makes an object smaller or larger. So for example, what we have dealt for so far is, let's say that we have two similar right triangles, right? We might know that this one, for example, I'm making this up, right? For example, this one might be sorry, not 2 but 1/2 times bigger, because you're going from larger to smaller. But then if you're going from smaller to larger, then it's going to be the reciprocal of that amount, which just means that it's going to be 2 times. This is just an example. So far we have just looked at an example something like this, but now we're going to get a little bit more specific. We know the general idea, let's get more specific. So what's new about this, right? So we know that in today's lesson, you're going to be, let's look at this right here. The goal of this lesson is to apply the concept of scale factors to an image, for example, a map, a drawing, something like that, and resize it. You're like, well, isn't that exactly what we have done so far? Yes and no. So what's new about today's lesson is this. In today's lesson, we're actually going to be using a special kind of a scale factor. Okay, now I hope you guys have your scratch paper, because this is going to be an extremely important lesson, and I hope you guys are writing down the key vocabulary. Okay, so again, we will use a special scale factor called a unit rate to resize our images. So again, the special scale factor is called the unit rate. Now, some of you guys might know this idea or concept from 6th grade, which is great. If not, no problem, we're still going to revisit it. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to resize any object given a scale by converting it into a unit rate or a unit scale. Now, I'm going to just introduce this idea of a proportion. Okay, and I'm going to give you some extra practice that you're going to be able to understand this idea of it. But this vocabulary word is actually going to what's going to take us to the next unit, right? But so unit rates are connected to proportions, and when we're learning math, we want to know how different topics are connected. So again, today we're learning about a special scale factor called the unit rate, also known as a proportion. All right, enough talking, let's get into the example. So let's look at this example. Again, I hope you guys have a paper and pencil in your hand and you're not just watching me, but you're practicing with me. So let's say that Rayshon, I apologize, went to visit the Great Pyramids, right, with his family, by himself, doesn't matter. He learned that the base length of each of the triangular face is about 750 feet. So this is the triangular face of the pyramid, and it says that the base is 750 feet. Okay, now he wants to create a replica. He wants to create a scale drawing of the pyramid using a scale of 1 inch equals 150 feet. So essentially what he wants to do is he wants to take this image, right, which is 750 feet, and he wants to create a replica. Remember, a replica has to be a scale copy. It has to be exactly the same, otherwise it's not a scale copy. Okay, so he wants to create a replica by using the scale factor of 1 inch equals 150 feet. So for every 150 feet, he's going to reduce it down to 1 inch. So what does that mean? So let's say that we know that since he's making it smaller, the replica is going to be smaller. We don't know how many inches it's going to be compared to 750 feet. So what is this idea of a scale factor? How do we use it? Okay, so for example, the idea here is that when you create a unit rate, you want to create a ratio in a specific order. Remember, in the last lesson, we also said that when we talk about scale factors, order is extremely important. Again, order matters. What do I mean by this? So when you're using the scale factor, we want to find inches. So the way you set up the ratio is that you always take the amount that you want. So in this case, what do we want? We want the inches, right? The quantity that we want. So we're going to say that the quantity wanted out of the quantity given. So what we want to find out here is the inches, the total inches of the replica given 750 feet, right? So it's a ratio, it's a division problem. Given, if we want to find out the inches given 750 feet. So how are we going to set up this ratio? We're going to write it like this. What's the quantity that we want? Inches. So we're going to write it like inches. That's the quantity that we want out of feet. So how many inches are in the scale? Well, 1 inch. And how many feet out of 150? So this is going to become our scale factor. Why is it called a unit rate? Now think about it. That means for every 1 inch, we are given 150 feet. A unit means 1. So for every 1 inch, we have 150 feet. You're always going to reduce it down to something compared to 1. Okay, for every 1 inch, you have 150 feet. So now let's go ahead and think about this problem. So we're going to scale this down using this scale factor. So we're going to multiply it by 1 over 150. Again, you can go to your Google calculator. I'm going to show you a calculator right here as well if you're still working on fractions. So we are going to do 750 times, oops, sorry, my fault. Let's go ahead and cancel this out. So 750 times, now we're going to multiply it by 150. So please make sure you put in the parentheses. And then you're going to do 1 divided by 150. Close the parentheses and press the equal sign and you get 5. Okay, so I know that if I multiply it, this is going to equal 5 inches. Okay, so the replica is going to be actually 5 inches in width. All right, so hopefully you guys can play the video a few times if you want, but the idea, we're going to practice a little once more. So let's look at another example. Okay, so now here's another example where Maria makes a scale drawing of an elephant. What is the actual length of the elephant? Right? So this is actually her replica. So imagine she's maybe a biologist, a zoologist, or somebody, and she's actually, or maybe an artist, and she's actually making an exact replica of an elephant. So she wants to take that and she wants to find the actual length. She wants to find what the actual size of the elephant would be that she based this off of. Now, your key is the scale. So what we want to find out is what number we would multiply it by to find the size of the actual big elephant. Now, I would like you guys to pause the video here and think about how are you going to set up your scale factor? How are you going to find your unit rate? So feel free to pause the video, just scratch it out, do some scratch work. Once you do it, then come back to it. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and do your scratch work. Okay, so hopefully now that you have come back to the video, you maybe have a scale factor, and let's see how you did. So let's say that in this case, what is the amount that we want? We want the actual length. Obviously, the replica is in inches. We know that from right here. So that's the amount that's given. The amount that we want is the feet. So again, that the ratio is going to be, let's go back and look up here, right? Is the quantity wanted over the quantity given. So we're going to write down the quantity that we want out of the quantity that's given. So what's the quantity that we want? We want feet, right? We want to know how big that elephant is out of the amount of inches. So now what is it? So now let's go ahead and apply the ratio that they give us to find the unit rate. So that means that we're going to take 2 feet out of, interesting, 1/4 of an inch. Again, right now the point is not for you to be lost in fractions. You feel free to use a calculator. That's not an issue at all. So let's go ahead and use our calculator. Okay, so again, 2 out of, so I'm going to divide, and then remember 1/4 is a fraction, so we're going to write it in parentheses. Parentheses 1 divided by 4. You're going to press equal at the end, right? Because we want to know what it equals to. And you see that 2 divided by 1/4 equals 8. Remember, we also did this in the do now, where we say if you actually divide by a number smaller than a whole, the number actually becomes bigger, right? It's a pattern that we explored in our number talks earlier. So this is going to equal 8. Now, what does that mean? That means that for every 1 inch, right, for every 1 inch that this replica is long, it actually represents 8 feet of the actual elephant. Again, unit rate. This is going to be my unit rate. For every 1 inch that this scale drawing represents, the elephant is actually 8 feet. For every 1 inch, you have 8 feet. So now we can go ahead and make our replica. So I'm going to take and multiply it by 8. So what would it be if I have 1.5? We multiply it. Again, you can use your calculator. And let's press cancel. And we have 1.5 times 8. And you get 12 feet. Okay, so this means that the actual elephant is 12 feet long. Also think about it, it makes sense, right? You're gonna have, if it says for every 1/4 inch, if for every 1/4 inch you have something that's 2 feet long, the actual elephant is going to be much larger than 1.5. Okay, now I hope you got some practice. Now let's do one more problem. Okay, so if you want to go back, rewind this problem one more time, understand how to set up the ratio, feel free to do it. Don't rush through it. And if you want, you could actually pause the video right now. I highly recommend you do that. I recommend that you do this next problem on your own, finish it, and when you get it done, go ahead and then play the video and see how you did. And if you make a mistake, see where you made the mistake. Okay, and then you could go back and you could retry, for example, problem 1 or problem 2 without looking at the answer, and maybe that would be a good practice. All right, so let's go ahead and do the final problem together. So the poster of Riverfront Green Campground shows the distance between the lake and the tents. What is the actual distance between the lake and the tents? So what we want is what is the actual distance between the lake and the tents. So here we go. The poster of the Riverfront Green Campground shows the distance between the lake. So here's the lake. And here is the campground. Okay, and on the map, if you were to take a ruler, I guess it would be 9 inches, right? So if you were to actually take a ruler and measure it, it would measure 9 inches. But then there's a key. On the side of the map, it gives you this key. And the key says that for every 5 inches, you have 25 yards. So you could actually know what it is in real life. Okay, so now keep in mind, they give us the inches. We want the actual distance. So the actual distance is in yards. One more time, look at this. They give us the inches, but we want the yards. So again, if you haven't, you want to pause it. If you weren't working on the problem already, how are you going to set up your ratio? Remember, it is, the ratio is what? The ratio is something that we want. Something that we want out of division. Division means out of. Something that is given to you. So in this case, what we want is in inches. Sorry, it's in yards. Quantity wanted. Let me actually write this a little bit neater. I'm being very messy. My handwriting is already not the best. Okay, here we go. So what we want is the quantity that we want out of the quantity that is given. So the quantity that we want, right, is in yards. Out of the quantity that is given to us right here, which is in inches. So now let's go ahead and look at our key. So the key says that we have 25 yards, right, that and out of 5 inches. So we're going to use the key. So now if I simplify it, I get 5 over 1. Again, if you notice, we get a unit rate. That means for every 5 yards, we have 1 inch. Or actually, the better way to say that would be for every 1 inch, you have 5 yards. So now we have a unit rate. So now if I actually take this, if I have for every 1 inch, I have 5 yards, then for multiplication, right? So for every, so now we're going to take 9 times 5, and that's going to give us 45 yards. So in actual, if it's 9 inches on the map, that means that in actual life, this would be 45 yards away. Okay, that would be 45 yards away. Okay, I hope that this was helpful. So this is not where the lesson ends. So please keep in mind that at the end of this, if you go and look on Google Classroom, you guys are going to have an activity from Khan Academy for scale drawings. Also, there's a question on Google Classroom that you have to answer. Okay, question on Google Classroom that you should answer. So there are 2 activities. One is from Khan Academy, the other one's on Google Classroom, and that is going to be due for you guys by Friday. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or G-chat me. Thank you.